What's good, everyone? It's your boy Nati with another video for the channel. Welcome back to DMV Sports Zone. And today, we're finally going to talk about the football team. And we're not just going to be talking about the football team, but we're going to be talking about football, period, with training camp finally underway. And after this tumultuous offseason, after the name change issue, after the Washington Post article, and of course this pandemic, I'm just glad we're going to be talking about football now with training camp being here finally. I don't know whether we're going to have a complete season with the pandemic still raging on, but once again, I'm just glad we're going to be talking about football. And this video will start my training camp series on the channel. It's going to be a two-part series where I delve into anything and everything training camp, whether it be the new media team that's sort of covering training camp for the organization, or even some training camp battles that will be interesting over the next couple of weeks. I'll be covering all of that in this two-part series, with this being part one, obviously, and this being the longer video. So with that being said, let's go. So with training camp, right? I can't really start without mentioning the whole Dontrelle Inman news that went down early this week. Dontrelle Inman being an 8th-year veteran receiver out of the University of Virginia, so he does offer that DMV connection there. And we officially signed him early Tuesday. He provides some much-needed wide receiver depth that, of course, we're missing now with Kelvin Harmon being out for the season with a torn ACL. So he does offer some depth, and he does also offer some sneaky speed. Not a lot of people know this, but he actually ran a 4.41 40-yard dash at the combine. I know it was a couple years back, but he still has that speed. It hasn't really gone away. He isn't too old at this point. And on top of that, he provides some excellent route running. He's always able to sort of find the holes in the defense and just be there for the quarterback to sort of throw the ball his way. And on top of that, just an added plus, he is a solid character guy. I've seen some interviews of him and also read up on some reports, and no matter where he's been, whether it be San Diego, Indianapolis, he's just been a really good guy, and his teammates really loved him. So I'm just glad that we have sort of that guy here in Washington, and it really fits Coach Rivera's mold and what he wants to build here in DC. So I'm glad he's on the team. Although he doesn't offer too much production, he didn't have too much production over the last couple of years. His best season coming in 2016 in San Diego, when he put up, I think, 810 yards and 4 touchdowns. That's a couple years. We're a couple years removed from that. I understand that, but he had a pretty solid season in 2018 with the Colts, especially once T.Y. Hilton went down and became the de facto wide receiver 1 in Indy, and did pretty well even while not putting up the greatest of numbers. And no matter where he's been, even with his production being low, he's always built a solid rapport with the established quarterbacks there, whether it be Phillip Rivers in San Diego or Andrew Luck in Indy. And hopefully he builds that here in Washington. With the young quarterback in Dwayne Haskins, you always need those guys who you can build that connection with, those guys that are really reliable down the field and just in open space. And Dontrelle Inman does provide that. And while he's not the greatest of signings, I initially, and still do now, think he's a meh signing, especially when we could have gone after guys like Josh Gordon, who is actually really valuable now, especially because 1, he has the production, 2, he has the veteran presence that we need in that group, and 3, the NFL is no longer suspending players for weeds. So he would have been a great fit here in Washington, and even Tom Brady loved him as a teammate. So it would have been nice to have Josh Gordon here, but at the same time, I get what Ron Rivera is doing and sort of building for the future, and Inman's sort of that perfect player for us, and him having a solid character. So I get that. And also, with the lack of depth that we have right now, I really do think he could compete with AGG for that wide receiver 2 spot. I really do. I think he actually has the inside track right now to start come week 1, although AGG should become a wide receiver 2 for the future, because he has better potential even than Kelvin Harmon, who went down, and he has the route running, he has everything you want in a wide receiver 2. But with the short off season, I just think Inman has the edge there, and will be our wide receiver 2 come week 1. And then outside of the Inman news, Alex Smith news also broke early this week, and he's recently cleared by his own doctors. And I get it, it's a monumental step. No one thought he could be here at this point, and he's made a full recovery from having his leg broken, almost amputated 2 years ago while on the field against the Texans. And we were riding high that season up until that point, but once Smith got injured, it chaos from there. And he was cleared by his doctors, but he's still technically waiting to be cleared by the team's doctors. And I know there's a lot of people who are saying, oh, this guy Alex Smith, you know, he was great for us. He carried us to a 6-3 record. Didn't really carry us, it was mostly our defense, but he did. He was the quarterback. I don't really think there will be much of a quarterback battle. One, because Alex Smith hasn't been cleared yet, and two, I think Dwayne Haskins is just the guy here in Washington. And even with guys like Kyle Allen and the rookie Steven Montez, I just think Dwayne Haskins is that quarterback, at least for this year. And we're trying to basically see through this season if he will be that quarterback for the foreseeable future for us. I'm still glad that Alex Smith is where he's at right now. He's made pretty good recovery, and he almost actually died from the infection on top of the injury that came about a couple months ago. So I'm just glad he's here, and he's almost fully healthy, and he will provide a veteran presence nonetheless on this team, whether he starts or not. And I actually think his time here in Washington though is pretty limited, just because we have a really young roster, and we're sort of moving in that direction with a young quarterback. And after this season, I get it, we have a bunch of cap room already in the 2021 offseason, but cutting Alex Smith could possibly give us, $20 million back. And I think that's a smart move when it comes to a young rebuilding team under Ron Rivera. So that might happen next offseason, who knows? But for now, just glad he's almost fully recovered, and I'm just glad he's here, right? And then now with some actual training camp talk, I'm just going to first start with the training camp setup this year. Obviously, they're not in Richmond at this point. They're in Ashburn. They're at what was Redskins Park, but I guess is now Washington Football Park. And it's an interesting setup. And we already saw guys like Terry McLaurin, Dwayne Haskins, and even rookies like Chase Young on the field. And it's interesting just to see rookies like Chase Young and Antonio Gibson on the field for the first time. And even on top of that, outside of what we're seeing on the field in Ashburn, we also have some new moves in the front office that have taken place for the last couple of weeks. Julie Donaldson is now the Senior Vice President of Media for the organization. And I talked to Corey about this on our last On the Warpath live stream, and make sure you guys check that out and make sure you sub to his channel. She's really a breath of fresh air, honestly, like for the Redskins media or for the Washington football team media. We had Larry Michael for so many years, and he really represented Redskins propaganda, like legit. He had this whole Skins Tangibles bit, and he never really talked bad about the team, even when the team deserved it. And I think Julie Donaldson is just, again, a great hire for us, and will continue to provide us really great training camp coverage. She's already posted a bunch of videos on YouTube, which last year was pretty much off and on for the team. So I'm just looking forward to bright things from her and her position as the Senior Vice President of Media, and also the new training camp setup that has come about this year because of the raging pandemic once again. I also wanted to talk about some very interesting training camp battles that should take shape over the next couple of weeks in Ashburn. I'll be talking about 3 of those battles in this video, and then talk about another set of 3 in my part 2 video. In this video, I'll be talking about the running backs, I'll be talking about the tight ends, and also I'll be talking about the linebackers. That being said, I'm gonna start with the running backs. The running backs, we can't talk about the group without first mentioning Adrian Peterson, right? The ageless wonder who's still doing it at age 35 years old. And he is a future Hall of Fame running back, of course. And even at the ages of 33 and 34, the last couple of seasons, he put up 1,000 yards for Washington 2 seasons ago, and put up almost 900 yards last year, and would have maybe put up another 1,000-yard season if it weren't for this inexplicable decision by Jay Gruden to bench him week 1. But I do have to admit, his high usage in Washington has largely to do with Darius Geis being injured over the last couple of years. Darius Geis was supposed to be our bell cow back for us in 2018 and moving forward, but he's just been injured way too much. And I think because of that, while I might be in the minority when I say this, I think Adrian Peterson will stay on the team. I think the Washington football team will keep him. They'll find a way. On top of that, I don't just think he will make the team, but I think he'll actually start come week 1. I really do. We have J.D. McKissick, of course, and J.D. McKissick is a running back similar to other backs I'll talk about later, in that he has a very interesting skill set. He's sort of a running back wide receiver flex. He can pass catch. He can run between the tackles, he can block, he can do all the things you want in running back. And Scott Turner, the offensive coordinator for our team, he's even raved about him every single chance he gets. He always talks about McKissick and the ability that he has, and the reason why Washington went after him in free agency. And I've seen it. I've seen his highlight film. I've seen him do it in Seattle and Detroit most recently. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on him to, 1, make the team, and 2, also play a pivotal role. But I really think he'll have a sizable role in this offense, with Scott Turner sort of bringing the Eric Coryell offense to Washington and sort of fitting the type of back that Scott Turner schemes for, as his history has shown. So I'm looking forward to him being in our offense this year, and I think he actually is the projected third down back at this moment. I really do. And then we have Bryce Love, the second-year back out of Stanford, who's finally healthy, activated off the PUP list, and he'll do some great things for us this year. I really do. He was drafted out of the 4th round a couple years back, and he was only drafted in the 4th round because he suffered a major injury in his senior year of college at Stanford, and a lot of people were pegging him as being a 1st or 2nd round pick beforehand, but it just happened. And I think now being healthy, even the always cautious Coach Rivera, who's very timid, I guess, with expectations for the team, even compared Love's skill set to McCaffrey, and obviously Coach McCaffrey early last season and the season prior, so he knows a lot about him, and I can kind of see that. I get it. Love is nowhere near McCaffrey at this point. He hasn't even played an NFL down yet. I get it. I'm not going to hype him up to that point, but he offers a similar skill set in that, again, like McKissick, can pass catch, can block, he can run between the tackles. He has very good speed, so he has that great home run threat. Because of that, I'm excited to see what Love will bring this season. I don't know if he'll bring a lot right away. I don't know if he'll show a lot come training camp, just because this will really be his first NFL action at all in the last 2 years. But I'm just excited to see what he brings, and he is a very young running back, so hopefully he sticks around for a while. And then after Love, we of course have Antonio Gibson, the rookie out of Memphis. And outside of Chase Young, Gibson is actually the rookie that I'm most excited for this season. I really am. Gibson offers, like McKissick, like Love, the dual threat ability of pass catching and running between the tackles for the running back position. And I really see Gibson as being more of that Alvin Kamara type player. And that's not just because he was drafted late in the 3rd round, but he does offer the same sort of ability that Kamara offers. And he didn't produce much in college in terms of reps or anything, but in his limited touches, he produced a lot. In 77 touches, he had 14 touchdowns. And that says all you need to know about his game-breaking ability. And hopefully he can bring that here to Washington. And I really think he's a big play waiting to happen. It's a great threat to have in a offense with limited weapons at this point, or at least unproven weapons. So I do actually see him being a threat competing with McKissick and Love as a sort of 3rd round back. But with him and all other NFL rookies, I'm just worried with the limited reps in the offseason, he will start off slow and maybe might not be that 3rd down back right away, but hopefully with some solid footing in the NFL, he'll become one. He'll become one for Washington as the season progresses. And then lastly, we got Peyton Barber. And Barber, out of the entire running back group, he's the back that I have the least confidence in and I think has the least potential. He is sort of that prodder type running back, that guy who might get you the tough yards, but that's about it. And even with the tough yards, he averaged 3 yards per carry over the last couple of seasons, so he's not even great in that aspect. And I think at most he's just going to be a backup to Adrian Peterson because he offers sort of the same type of skill set and in terms of limited pass catching ability. But I think he really is on the outside looking in terms of making the roster, and I actually don't project him to make the roster, but he might be re-signed in case Adrian Peterson goes down with an injury or God forbid gets placed on the COVID list, or if any of the running backs get placed on the COVID list. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Peyton Barber and the running back group as a whole. Let's feature Nati here after Darius Geis was released late last week. So now I think the running back room as a whole will shape up with Adrian Peterson, of course, the Wily veteran, starting right away. I also think Bryce Love, Antonio Gibson, and J.C. McKissick will make the roster, with Peyton Barber having an outside chance with Darius Geis no longer being in the picture. I think Antonio Gibson will be getting a lot more reps. Even as a rookie, not having too many reps during the offseason. I just think he offers great potential as a runner in between the tackles, but also as a pass catcher out of the backfield. But I think out of all these running backs, Bryce Love will benefit the most with Geis no longer being there. And I'm excited to see what he has, right? A year and a half after he dealt with a major injury in college. He hasn't really played much, but he does definitely offer that game-breaking potential that we want to see out of the running back position. So those are my thoughts on the group as a whole. And then with tight end, first, I have to mention Jeremy Sprinkle, right? The young incumbent tight end who will really contend to be the opening day starter at the position. He had abysmal numbers last year. He didn't really put up too much. I think it was about 250 yards and a touchdown. And that says a lot too because Jordan Reed and Vernon Davis were injured for extended periods of time. And also on top of that, he had critical drops on 3rd downs throughout the season. And that was terrible for especially a rookie quarterback at the time who needed the solid playmakers around him to sort of get some solid footing in the NFL. So that was problematic last year. At the same time, he is a pretty decent blocker, and that might be enough for him to possibly be the starting tight end come week 1. I don't know, but if he does become the starting tight end, and we'll see a lot through camp in terms of whether or not he deserves to be it this year, that sort of says a lot about the tight end position at this point. And I just hope we get this resolved as soon as possible. If not this season, then maybe next offseason when we have that boatload of cap money. Then after Sprinkle, we of course have Logan Thomas, the Virginia Tech Hokie. So another DMV connection there. And like Sprinkle and like other tight ends in the group, honestly, he doesn't really have too much production to his name. He didn't really put up too great of numbers over the last couple of years at the tight end position, but he showed several flashes with the Lions, especially last year, ironically playing against us. And I think he is still relatively new at the tight end position, so he has a lot more room to grow. And outside of Thaddeus Moss, I think he actually has the highest potential in the tight end group. So I see him as competing for the tight end 1 spot right away, if not becoming a solid high-end tight end 2 as the season progresses. I also, not a lot of people talk about this, but I see Logan Thomas as being that Eric Flowers type of player this year, that Eric Flowers of 2020 for the Washington organization. And Eric Flowers, he was sort of unheralded in his first couple of years in the league. He was pretty bad on the Giants as an offensive tackle, but with a change of scenery, with a change of position, right, he became the left guard for us. He played pretty well and was actually our best offensive lineman for stretches during last season, especially with Brandon Sheriff being out. So I see Logan Thomas as sort of offering that potential. Hopefully with a change of scenery, he could really prove that he's worthy of a tight end 1 spot this year. And then after Logan Thomas, of course, got Richard Rodgers. And Rodgers pretty far removed from his best season a couple years back in 2015 with the Packers, where he had about 510 yards and 8 touchdowns. So I personally don't really see too much potential out of Rodgers. Hasn't really shown much over the last couple seasons. He hasn't really played much, period. On top of that, he, even in Green Bay, he played with Aaron Rodgers, and people have to really take that into consideration in terms of the sort of quarterback play that he had and why he put up the numbers that he did, largely because he had Rodgers at the helm in Green Bay. So I think although with the lackluster tight end group that we have right now, we don't really have too much high-end talent, I think Richard Rodgers is also on the outside looking in and will likely be a roster cut come week 1 this season. And then we have Hill Henches, who some people are high on him. I know Ed Oliver is high on him, and you guys should check out his channel. Henches is one of the other incumbent tight ends on this roster, and while he has the advantage there in the sense that he knows a little bit about the organization after playing a couple of games last season and really playing towards the end of the season where he actually had a couple of touchdowns, I see the potential. I see the youth. I see the blocking ability. I see the receiving ability. But I still think it's going to be tough for him to make the roster this year when you have guys like Jeremy Sprinkle, Thaddeus Moss, who I'll mention right after this, and also you have Logan Thomas, who could break out this year. When you have guys like that who might not give you much high-end potential but do give you solid depth, I don't know if Hill Henches will make the roster this year, but who knows? It's been a crazy offseason. It's going to be a crazy camp, so he could possibly make it. And then, of course, Thaddeus Moss. Like I said earlier, Moss is the guy who I see having the highest potential in this tight end group, even as an undrafted rookie free agent out of LSU. And I'm also not just saying that because he's the son of the legendary Randy Moss, but Thaddeus Moss, the son, is a great blocker. He was known as a great blocker in college, and he was also widely regarded as the best blocker at the position coming into the draft. And on top of that, he really dropped the ball at LSU, and we saw that last year on that run that the LSU Tigers made all the way to the national championship. He didn't really drop the ball in those playoffs especially, and made a lot of tough catches down the field. Who can forget the tough toe tap catch that he made against Trevon Diggs, a DMV native who played for Alabama. And he's really shown the ability to sort of find the open holes in the defense. Joe Burrow, the Heisman Trophy winner last year and the number 1 pick this year, really depended on him throughout the playoffs last year and all the way to the title, as I mentioned earlier. So Thaddeus Moss does offer that ability, and I get it. Isn't super athletic, hence why he's an undrafted rookie free agent for us. But with the blocking, with the pass catching, with just everything, I think Thaddeus Moss does offer the highest potential, and hopefully he can be that tight end 1 for us for the foreseeable future. Maybe be a high-end tight end 2. Who knows? I do think it's going to be tough, like I said earlier, for Antonio Gibson to sort of find solid footing in the NFL and to start fast, especially with the shortened offseason due to the pandemic. So he might start slow, but I think he'll find his way as the season progresses. And then finally with the linebacker position. And this position is going to be interesting just to see how it shapes out come the season and just come training camp, because it's going to be a really tough competition along all three positions in the new 4-3 scheme brought over by defensive coordinator Jack Del Rio. And I personally, as I said in my roster breakdown video of what was before the Washington Redskins, I think Thomas Davis is our projected pass coverage will linebacker. He's brought over from the Chargers and he's getting up there in age. I think he's about 37 right now. But at the same time, he put up over 100 tackles last year on that defense and didn't really show any signs of age, didn't really slow down in terms of his abilities. So I think he'd be great. And he already built that rapport with Ron Rivera, as we all know, in Carolina for so many years. And he played in that Super Bowl in 2015. And Ron Rivera really trusts him. And because of that trust, because of that veteran leadership that he always brings as the captain of the defense, I think he has the inside track of being the will linebacker for us come week 1. Hopefully, though, I want someone else to become that linebacker as the season progresses, but I'll talk about that a little bit further. And then with the projected starting Mike linebacker, as I mentioned, once again, that roster breakdown, I think Jon Bostic is going to take over the position. I think Bostic was solid for us last year, although he wasn't spectacular. He did have over 100 tackles and did make some nice plays in stopping the run last year. Wasn't too great of a coverage backer, but he was great in the run stopping aspect. And I think his experience last year commanding the defense, albeit on a pretty bad team, a 3-13 team, I think his experience there sort of suits him well as being the captain of the defense this year at the Mike linebacker position. And Ron Rivera sort of looks for those veteran guys now, especially with the short offseason once again. So I think Jon Bostic should play a pretty sizable role in our defense this year. And then Cole Holcomb is the last projected starting backer that I have. And I project him to start the run stopping, strong side linebacker position. And out of all these guys, I think Cole Holcomb has the highest potential in this group. We saw that last year with those 100 tackles, but top of that, he was super fast all over the field. He made the great plays in stopping the run and was really a great young player, great rookie last year for us, a great hidden gem that we found in the 5th round. And, he wasn't too great in pass coverage last year, but as a rookie, hopefully he progresses, in the next couple of years and becomes a great pass coverage backer, but he doesn't really need to, right? At the strong side, he just needs to stop the run. That's pretty much his responsibility, and he was pretty good at that last year, even on that pretty bad defense. So I like Cole Holcomb's chances, and it'll be exciting to see him on the field in training camp, making some plays when the offense scrimmages against the defense. And then we have guys who will be battling for those backup linebacker spots. Got Dion-Hamilton, who is a great pass coverage guy, and even Pro Football Focus notes that in their ratings. And he just hasn't been able, though, to stay on the field, whether it be at Alabama in college or here in Washington on the pro level. And I could really see Sean being a great depth piece for us, but I could also see him competing possibly with Jon Bostic or even Thomas Davis, who once again is getting up there in age, for one of those two starting linebacker positions. But with the injuries that have mounted for him over the last couple of years, I just see him as being a solid depth piece at this point. And then we have Khaleke Hudson, who was a 5th round pick out of Michigan this year, who really provides that Swiss Army knife type skill set for us. Like I said in my draft breakdown a couple months ago, Khaleke Hudson played the Viper role in Michigan. And what the Viper role entails is rushing after the quarterback, also stopping the run, and also covering receivers and tight ends. And Khaleke Hudson did a pretty good job of that last year. And I think he could be a threat in this defense this year and possibly contend for a high-end backup position, especially just to start, because once again, he's a rookie, doesn't have too many reps under his belt, and didn't have too many reps in the offseason with it being really limited. So I think he does have a good shot of making the roster and being a solid backup for us. And it'll be exciting to just see him on the field for the first time for our organization in training camp in Ashburn and making some plays for the first time. And then we have Kevin Pierre-Louis, who is a solid depth linebacker who most recently played for the Bears, and I'm sort of familiar with him because I go to college in Chicago, so I watched a couple of Bears games every now and then during the season. And, he was a great backer according to Pro Football Focus. He graded pretty well. And I really do think he has a solid chance of competing for one of the starting linebacker spots in this new 4-3 defense brought over by defense coordinator Jack Del Rio. And even if he doesn't end up starting, I think he's nonetheless going to be a versatile piece for that defense in 2020 season. And then we also have Josh Harvey-Clemons. Kind of. So Josh Harvey-Clemons was already a guy, in my opinion, who was on the roster bubble, largely because one, couldn't stay healthy, right? Suffered a bunch of injuries over the last couple of years. And two, Ka'Leki Hudson sort of pretty much has the same skill set, is younger, is more healthy, and we drafted him in the 5th round this year for a reason. And he offers, once again, that similar skill set. He played the Viper role, and that's sort of what Josh Harvey-Clemons was tasked to do over the last couple of seasons for us out of the linebacker position. But now especially, he's pretty much not in our plans after opting out of the 2020 seasons due to COVID-related health concerns, which makes sense, especially because 2 of his young sons have asthma, severe asthma, and he does as well. So he's not really in our plans for 2020, and I don't really think he'll be around the team or the organization for much longer, to be honest. And then, of course, Reuben Foster, the X factor on our defense. I am telling you, if this guy stays healthy, if he actually is healthy throughout the 2020 season, he can possibly push our defense, which is probably right now already a top 15 defense. He could possibly push it into top 10 defense or possibly even higher than that. I really believe in Reuben Foster that much. I really think he's the missing piece on our defense and would have done great things for us last season if he didn't suffer that major leg injury and was out for several months and experienced substantial nerve damage. I think Reuben Foster, once healthy, I think it can compete for that will linebacker position or even that Mike linebacker position. I really do think so. Well, I don't see him being a starter come week 1. I don't see him being ready to that point. I think eventually as the season progresses, he will be a starting linebacker for us, and will not just be a starting linebacker for us, but be a really pivotal part on that defense and making it a really sound unit in the linebacker position, but also a solid unit as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see how things shape up for the linebacker position. Training camp should say a lot about what the projected starters will be come week 1, and also just about our depth as a whole and whether we need to go after and get another linebacker or we're pretty good where we're at right now with the position. And that's all I got for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. It was much appreciated. Please make sure to like, comment, subscribe to this channel. It would be awesome if you do so. And also make sure to follow our Twitter at DMV Sports Zone and our new IG, brand new IG, where we're posting fire content, all lowercase DMV Sports Zone. And with that being said, please be on the lookout for part 2 of this training camp video series, which should be coming out by Wednesday at the latest. And peace.